is 6:30. We're called to order, and we'll go to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody'd stand, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to go to the third item on the agenda, which is a motion. Somebody like to make a motion to approval of the meeting agenda tonight?
This is Barb. So moved.
Chris, I'll second it.
No discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Or do we have to go through the names again?
Got me off
Yeah.
guard there.
Do we have to go through the, well, let's go through them
I
then.
think you should, yeah.
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
I think we gotta put our mic down by us here. Just know that a couple of those council meetings, we couldn't hear each other. Item number 4 on the agenda is an approval of February 2nd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting minutes. Anybody like to make a motion?
This is Chris, so moved to approve.
This is Bob, I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. Bob?
Aye.
Barb, aye.
Ron, aye.
Chris, aye.
Item number 5 on the agenda, approval of the February 2nd, 2022 public hearing meeting minutes, 15561 Hornsby Street Northeast, Caribou Cabin variance application. Anybody like to make a motion to approve of those minutes?
This is Barb. Motion to approve.
This is Ron, I'll second it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Chris?
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
Thank you. Item number 6. The main deal tonight is a public hearing and discussion. 13528 Lake Drive Northeast, a conditional use permit amendment. Blake Drilling Company Incorporated. It has Michael Meyer here, but tonight sitting, I think Michael Meyer is the applicant. And agenda pages 1 through 26 and enclosures pages E1, E4, additional pages A1 through A7. Where's Carissa? Is she here tonight?
She's online.
She's online? Oh, Carissa, would you like to read the notice as published?
Sure will. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held by the City of Columbus Planning Commission on Wednesday, March 16th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as parties may be heard, and will be conducted in an interactive technology format and held at the Columbus City Hall located at 16319 Kettle River Boulevard, Minnesota, to consider a conditional use permit amendment to permit a proposed expansion of building size for the second phase of the Blake Drilling Co. site development in the commercial industrial district. Members of the public and interested in attending in person or monitoring the meetings should contact the city offices at 651-464-3120 or visit the city website for more information at columbusmn.us. The hearing shall continue until all evidence and testimony has been received. Applicant is Blake Drilling Co. Michael Meyer. Property owner is MN Management Partners. Property location is 13528 Lake Drive Northeast. Legal description as written. Signed Elizabeth Mersko, zoning administrator. It was submitted to the Forest Lake Times on February 28th and published in the Forest Lake Times and posted on the website on March 3rd, 2022.
Thank you, Carissa. At this time, for the record, I guess Michael Meyer isn't here tonight, but representing Blake Drilling Company will be John Williams. If John Williams, the applicant, and his wife would like to come up and sit in those chairs up there. There's a microphone. If you'll acknowledge your presence and state your name and current address. Yeah, well, that'd be good.
My name is Jill Bukuski. My current address is 9149 Hemlock Lane North, Maple Grove, Minnesota 55369.
My name is John Williams. Current address is 5040 201st Place Northeast, Linwood Township, Minnesota 55092.
Thank you, John. Good evening, both of you.
Good evening.
The commission received your application for the conditional use permit amendment, along with your narrative statements, and there was a number of them. We're coming in all the time. As normal protocol, and for the record, could you brief us a little about this project you're about to undertake?
Yes, so basically what we wanted to do was amend the original CUP on the property to allow us to increase the size of the building that was approved prior. The reasoning behind that is once we just started plotting in offices and trying to figure out the inner workings of the building, we discovered that we would probably want to be a little bit wider on the building and a little bit longer on the building to make everything work inside of that easier. So then we decided that we wanted to ask the council's permission to do that.
Okay, you started this in 2016, correct?
Correct, yep, 2016, so we started the project and intent was to be in 2 phases. Phase 1 was completed, I want to say, I don't have an exact date, but I want to say it would have been late 2016. The Phase 2's schedule was to be a few years down the road with the intent of the main office building being built that would have the offices and everything, the warehouse and all that, and that was to be placed on the front side of the properties facing Lake Drive. The building pad's already been built for it, all the grading had been done for it, septic systems were built for all of that to be in there, power brought in, all that stuff's in there ready to go for it, we just needed to put the building in. The reason we waited was to be able to forecast a little bit better what the economy's gonna do. We're driven off of housing, so if the economy takes a turn, we suffer. We didn't want to put ourselves into a situation where you have a huge payment for both of these buildings going up at the same time and not being able to deal with that. So our thought was to wait on Phase 2 until we could afford to do that, and here we are.
Well, thank you. Also, for the record, did you receive a letter or an email from Ben Gutnick, Associate Planner for the city, dated March 9th, 2022, noting your project with his findings of facts and recommendations?
Yes, I have one dated March 14th, I guess.
Well, you probably got I probably typed in the wrong number then. The 9th, that must have been the second one then, huh?
I know there was 2, yeah.
Yep, that was the engineer's staff report.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you have any questions or comments about them that you'd like to express at this time?
I guess what I would like to express about it is when we did this in 2016, we were under the impression that all we would have to do is get a building permit, go ahead and build it. Understanding that we increased the size of the building, changed some parameters, and therefore we understand that's why we're here today doing what we're doing. What we'd like to do is try to build a building that is similar in look to what's exactly on the property right now. There is a building currently on the property. We'd like to keep at least the same exterior elevations look of that so that it matches, and that falls into matching with a lot of our neighbors, man caves down the street, the trucking company directly across the street from us. They all have that same look. So we're asking that we're able to stay within those same parameters of the 2016 CUP. I guess, I know there's been some changes in the rules or in the in the code since then. I know we addressed the parking issue with that. I did not come up with anything that was an issue other than I think the face of the building or how it looked from the right-of-way. And so we're hoping to keep it similar to what we had approved in 2016.
Okay. I'm going to open up, anybody have any questions to John from the Planning Commission? Start with Chris?
Sure. Hi,
Hi.
John, Jill, how are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Good. I do have a few questions for you. I know the documentation also refers back to the cup that was issued in 2016 for you. And there was, I did pull those documents, and I was kind of comparing them to your new narrative and some of the new items, and I just want to get on the record. One thing is, I believe here you're talking about how many vehicles are going to be stored on there, and there was, what was it? 15 one-ton cabs, chassis, 20 flatbed trailers, and approximately 6 semi-tractors and flatbed trailers or tankers. Back in 2016, there was like skid steers, boom trucks, what was it, loose pipe, shipping containers, and multiple other items. Is your business changed that much that the items that were put in the finding in the facts and that part of it not relevant anymore to your business? Or
No,
will they still be part of what's stored on site?
They would still be part of what's stored.
Okay, so then my question is, Ben, to you, do we need to add all that besides?
You can simply, so what I have done in condition, let me find it real quick.
Screening.
So number 9 of the conditions is approval is contingent upon compliance and consistency with the conditional use permit approved September 16th, 2016. And we can expand on that to say consistency and compliance with the findings of fact and conditional use permit. Or if we do want to, we could take some time and go through individual findings. But that number 9 of the recommendations was to ensure that the initial conditional use permit that being amended, those findings and conditions are still going to be applicable.
Okay,
that are
so the
relevant.
documentation will stay all together with
Correct,
the one
yep.
in 2016 and this one, because you talk about racking being on site and that, and not that it's a big deal. I mean, it's good to see that you're expanding and everything. I just wanted to make sure,
That you have a clear picture of it.
yes,
Nope,
that
I
we have a
understand.
clear picture of what's going to be stored on there and what your business is. One of the other items is, in the 2016 one, you talked about typical hours being Monday through Saturday, and then occasionally emergency nighttime or Sunday activity. Is that relevant here? And
Not so much, I mean, over the last few years, we have not done Saturdays. We still, the emergency part of that would still be in there. I'm not
Okay.
saying that there wouldn't be any Saturday work. There's some things that we can't control. We're a subcontractor, so we're bound by contract to do certain things. We run into timelines that we have to work as much as we can to do things.
Right.
So I'm not gonna say that it wouldn't happen, but I'd say over the last 2 or 3 years.
But it's possible.
It's possible, yeah.
so really, you would like that to stay in?
I would, yes.
And I
yeah.
think, Ben, where I'm going with this right now is we have one thing saying hours are this and now this, so we should probably either refer to this totally and take the hours out so there's no discrepancy, or just kind of clean it up. Do you agree? We don't want discrepancies.
Correct, and actually Elizabeth just corrected me. We do combine the conditions, but it's still consistent with the condition is We will make sure that it is cleaned up, but the conditions are what is recorded against the property, not the findings of fact. So
Yep.
as long as the conditions are consistent and there isn't a discrepancy between the two, such as site plan updated this date and something like that, it's more of the relevant ones, making sure that the nuisance conditions and other things are still addressed. So the findings of fact aren't quite as much to worry about as long as the business is still consistent. And from what I understood from Mike's discussion with myself and I believe hearing from you both, you're only adding the building. The business is still going to, save for the hours changing, you're actually reducing your hours. Your business operation and the use of the property is going to
It's
continue.
still
Yeah,
the same.
it'll be the same, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Really, the only thing that we're changing is the size of the building.
And that's where I'm coming to next. You know, I know the code requires no more than 50% metal. And I know you're referencing some of the other buildings, depending on when they were built and what the code was at that time dictates that. And I know you bring up the man caves. Part of theirs, they include glass and more glass and the brick that make up the not more than 50% metal. I know you were given the permit to build this in the CUP based on the 200 feet by 60 feet. And I'm not, you said 2011 is when the 50% went in?
That was the most recent, what Planning Commissioner Chris is referencing in 2011, our ordinance, the most recent codified ordinance that I was able to find in our electronic files earlier today, indicated that that no more than 50% rule was in that 2011 ordinance.
So it's been in place for a while, and I know back through the years, I sat through a lot of council meetings, and one of the biggest things on Lake Drive was always to make it more attractive and more eye-appealing. And that's kind of why that 50, no more than 50% metal is there. If you had brick in the back, because I think it's all steel in the back, just a different color, right? Do you have brick wainscot in the back?
No, I don't.
Okay, I didn't think so, based on what I saw. To me, it needs more, or I should say, less metal in the front. And I believe it should meet the not more than 50%. I know you talked about doing some brick along the columns and that, and some different things, and maybe you could find a way to add a little more. I know money's always an issue. I mean, things are expensive right now too, and that. But my personal opinion is you need to meet the code and come up with less metal in the front.
The problem with that being on the construction side of the building is the way that they build the building, they have girders that run along that. So if you get away from the metal, it becomes difficult to attach anything to the front of it. And so they don't like to not use.
I know.
Because now we've come into issues of the building's ability to hold wind and different things like that, and I don't want to, I mean, we talked about putting the brick up on the corners of it, and there's gonna be brick up around the doors. For the two doors that'll sit there, there is windows that go along that whole face, along the warehouse area up on the upper part of it, and then we do have the windows into the office area in there. So, I mean, I think the closest that when we were doing the numbers, is around 30, what was that? They just got the numbers to me today. So right now, the closest that we've gotten with what we're proposing was like 30, almost 34% of the face of the
They're
building.
getting close.
And I don't know how much more we'd be able to do without it looking ridiculous, in my opinion. Once you start getting above that certain level on the front of it with any kind of stone, I don't think that that's a very nice look.
And I'm not going to design the building or anything. I'm just saying what the ordinance is. And I'm I know architects, designers, they can do things. I don't know if you can add more glass to decrease, and whatever. I'm again, not going to design it. It's a long building. I mean, 260 feet out front is a very long building, and I know you have the glass where the office part is. You got the windows in front and the wainscot there with the brick. I think you need to try and get closer to the less than 50%, in my opinion, because that is what the code states. And, you know, I'm kind of always the one that says we got to be careful about setting precedents. And part of that ordinance is to make sure we're not having big steel structures and big pole buildings all over.
Yeah,
And that's really what the intent is to make it look better. So, you know, that's my opinion. So I'm really glad to see you building. I mean, it's wonderful that your business is to the point where you can, because you're moving it all from Blaine, correct?
yeah, once this building is completed, the entire operations move here for good, and then we don't have any other buildings.
And I mean, I'm ecstatic that we're seeing, you know, your business flourish, that you can come here and do it, and that's wonderful. But I do think we need to look at the code and try to meet that. So, thank you.
That's it?
Yep.
Bob, do you have anything? Any questions?
Yeah, hi, this is Bob. Thanks for coming out this evening. Talk a little bit about your landscaping plan as you see it today to help mitigate some of the issues I think that Commissioner King has with the aesthetics of the property. Is there anything that you can do to help offset?
Well, we propose to put trees in basically along the whole front of the building on the east side of the parking lot.
How tall are the trees when they're first planted?
That's, I guess, up to debate.
Yeah.
I mean, I would assume that we would have a mature tree that you'd put in there as, you know, we don't want to put in a little sapling that, I won't live to see that thing grow up.
Well, we've seen that on several other projects where they've had this great landscaping plan, and then they put in 3-foot tall trees.
That's not our intent. I mean, I'm looking at you'd have like a 6 or an 8-foot tree that would be planted with the ball root and everything else that would go in there. That would, to me, would be sort of the size that I would be looking at as far as going in along that entire parking lot in front. So that would basically, when they're in bloom, that would cut a lot of the building off to it. And then there'll be shrubs and stuff along the front edge of the building, and that would basically go along that whole front edge and the south edge of the building as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
I see that the stormwater plan is yet to be approved through the watershed district. Adding that much more square feet and surface area, do you anticipate any changes to your drawings related to the runoff?
The changes for that were going to be for the additional area that we're adding in for the parking lot or work area, storage area in the back. It really, the building would have not changed any of that. But because we're moving everything over now, we're looking at, we need a little bit more space in that fenced-in area. As far as we've been told from our engineer and the watershed, that they don't see it being a problem the way it's set up right now, as long as we would create a new, like in the drawings here, draw a new plan or put a new pond, I guess, out to the west there, that sounds like we would have extra storage already at that point.
Yeah.
And so should anything else acquire, we would have a little bit extra.
In the 5 years since you've done your first phase one, 6.5 years roughly, the infrastructure usage of Lake Drive has changed significantly. Now, I know you have a plan into the Anoka County Public Works to figure out any traffic impacts coming in and out. When you move your Phase 2 business into this building when completed, will you be adding any more employees at that point to that property?
No.
Okay, so you said you're gonna move you're
Well,
consolidating 2 offices into one larger office here.
there's currently one employee that works there periodically on that property. That's all that's
Okay.
been there for the last few years. So now everybody will be on that property. So technically, yes, we'll be increasing over the last couple of years, but
Yeah.
we're not adding more employees to the company per se. It'll just be to the property.
Trying to understand that better, because my concern is by adding more traffic to an already busy highway, it just adds more safety concerns for the areas.
Right, and we did talk with Anoka County when we originally did the building, and they had us put the turn lane in. We paid for that, we established all that in there, and we actually did talk to them here again for this one, and they said that there's no update that would be required.
Yep.
We had an email from the Anoka County Engineering Department.
I share some of the same concerns that Commissioner King has from the aesthetics part of it. And a lot has happened over the last 6.5 years since you've completed Phase 1 and now going into Phase 2. We're not the only city whose ordinances have changed in the last 6.5 years. And so what the intent is over the last few years is to try to clean up the area, to make it more aesthetically appealing as you drive down the street into our fair city of Columbus. And so that's the reason for the questions on the exterior. And that's the reasons that we've made changes over the last few years to help improve that. And so when we talk about things like precedents, or we talk about things like, being fair to all, the rules are the rules as they sit today. I'm sure you didn't anticipate it would take you 6.5 years to do Phase 2, when you built Phase 1. And so at that time, had you come in 2 years later to do Phase 2, it probably wouldn't have had a large of impact aesthetically as it does today. And so that's the reasons you're getting the questions from the commissioners as you are today. So that was all the questions I had.
Thank you, Bob. Barb?
No, I don't have any questions. It's a building for a business for storage, and I think it looks nice, and I appreciate the fact that they're positioning it so that it conceals some of their equipment and so forth, so.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of outside storage, and we know that that is an eyesore with some other cities. Coming from Blaine, that was a hot topic
Yep.
out there as well. But we had discussions with them, and we were able to work with them to be able to do what we do and hide most of it behind our fences and different things. So that consideration was taken when we were looking at how do we place the buildings into this. The shop that's currently sitting in there now was placed to try to block the northwesterly wind from blowing into the doors on the building that we want to place now. And we wanted to place this one to block basically most of what we're storing and dealing with in that back lot, so that people don't get to see that, because a lot of people don't care to see that.
Yeah, I think it looks really nice, the way you're laying it out, and I, for one, appreciate that you put that much thought into all of those issues, plus ones we don't know about, like snow blowing in the doors and so forth. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Barb. One question for you, John. How far back from where the trees that you planted there between those residential places
Yes.
and to the edge of where your storage of the vehicle's going to be, is there going to be an open space back there, or is it going to be?
Yeah, so from Lake Drive, and I estimate numbers, from the right-of-way of Lake Drive, our working area, for lack of better words, is only going to be about 750 feet back from Lake Drive. The rest of that, we plan on continuing to let the farmer farm that from our fence line back to those pine trees and even onto the residential areas that we own back there as well. Because those 2 residential lots are ours as
You
well.
don't, are those up for sale, or?
No, they will never be. We don't want anybody in there. We
Okay,
don't.
so
we
you're
don't-
really making a large bumper zone then?
Right, that was, and we knew, when building the first building, we knew there was opposition. There was if I remember right, there was a company that wanted to come in and wreck cars or do something in there. And there was a lot of residents that were upset about that and didn't want it. So we took into consideration that we wanted to be at least as nice as we could be going into it, to say, we're not here to step on your toes. We don't, we have no problem in buffering that. So we created those 2 residential lots to give us that buffer against the residential zones. And we have no intentions on selling those 2 lots anytime at all.
If I'm right, you bought like 26.5 acres, wasn't it, in the
Yeah.
initial? And
Yeah, I
so-
believe that's correct.
So your operation's gonna probably what, cover 10 acres or 6 acres?
Yeah, maybe 10 if at most, yeah.
So, and then if it's 10 and you got 16 left, 10 of it's for the residential, and then there's 6 acres in between. Okay, thank you.
Rough numbers, yes.
Well, it's nice to leave a buffer zone, if you can afford it today. Any other questions?
No?
Yeah, this is Bob. I have one additional question. John, I wasn't part of the planning commission in 2016, so I wasn't familiar with the approval back in the day with the CUP. Was there any discussion, and I don't see anything on the blueprints, is there any discussion to add fuel servicing as part of your storage on site? There's no fuel storage at all on the plan?
No, what we have, currently we have a temporary storage, or basically it's a trailer with a tank on it in Blaine. Their regulations wouldn't have allowed anything, so that's currently what we have now, but we don't think we've looked at anything beyond that itself.
Do you plan on bringing that on site at some point?
That was the plan, yes.
Okay. So how many gallons does that hold?
It's a 1,000-gallon tank.
Okay.
Is that on a trailer then?
It's mounted on a trailer, so it's portable.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I guess it's time to open up the hearing to the public. Anyone who has an interest in this matter and wants to present testimony as evidence on the issues, please acknowledge themselves by stating their name and address, after which you have the floor to speak.
Mr. Chairman, this is Sue Wagaman. I'm on Zoom.
Yes, you have the floor, Sue. Do you have-
Hi.
He doesn't have to give a name and address.
I'm right behind the property. So I am on the council, but tonight I'm speaking as a resident. I live at 13530 Zodiac Street. So I did have a question, but now it's a little bit different because I didn't realize how much space they were going to be using. But I just first wanted to acknowledge that I appreciate the buffer that they have put in. They've been a very good business to have right across the street from our house, and I appreciate that. But my question was going to be, and I don't know if they would ever extend farther back, but I was curious about the fence that's going to be around that back area. Because I think the plan did say that there was going to be a fence. I just wasn't sure what kind of fence it was going to be.
Okay. Well, when we hold these public hearings, I guess we'll ask the question of John in a minute here. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Sue? So we don't get into a conversation here. And you'll probably see him coming up to your meeting anyway.
Well, I won't be able to speak at that meeting. I'm here as a resident.
Okay, all right, yeah. Well, you know, there doesn't seem to be much going on, so maybe, John, could you
It would
address
be
that?
A chain link fence is.
It'll be a chain link fence?
Chain link fence, yep.
What, 6 foot?
Approximately, I believe it's a 10-foot tall with the barbed wire across the top, so nobody can crawl over.
Do you hear that, Sue?
Yes, I heard that, thanks.
Do you have anything else, Sue?
There is a fence currently in place right now that's there.
Will that be the fence that you're talking
That's the
about?
same fence that's.
The same
there.
fence?
Yeah, we're just gonna be moving it back a little bit and adding to it is all.
When you say a little back, 10 feet, 100, or?
I don't have the dimensions
Oh.
with me, I'm sorry.
Okay,
To me, it would be less than 100 feet,
okay.
or where it's currently sitting right now.
Sue, did you hear that?
Okay, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're going to have, did you want to say something back there, Steve? Yeah, I did. Okay, you want the floor. John and Jill, is it? Yeah, if you could relinquish your chairs there, and with the idea that we can call you back.
I'm Steve Wagaman, 13530 Zodiac Street, Columbus, 55014. And I'm actually Sue's husband, but I just had some clarification things, and I would like to say too that I hadn't seen it before. First of all, thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Chair and commissioners. But I hadn't seen it before either, and I would like just to say to you guys that I really do appreciate you taking the effort to put a buffer between us. And that really does make a big difference. And the one question that I had is, how many employees do you have, or how many employees is there at this business? I never did hear how many they have in Blaine or.
Well, we got it here.
Yeah.
3,
Okay.
30.
And then my only other question was equipment with beepers. Do you have a bunch of that, or is that?
We have skidsters, we have 3 skidsters, most of the time those are.
So you're
they'll
not,
come out at night.
you're not running nonstop through the yard back and forth and that kind of stuff?
No.
Okay, great. And let's see. No, I think that's it. I'd just like to say that I appreciate all your effort to try to be neighborly. And
Thank you, Steve.
thank you.
Steve, that folder back there on where we sign in, that has all the data on this public hearing, so if you want to read.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online or on Zoom that would like to make a statement? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open up for discussion with the Planning Commission here. So, who would like to start off?
There's a couple things been in the paperwork. I just want to question to see if we have it accurate. On page 23, number 22, it says they're expanding approximately 50 feet. Aren't they going 60 feet? Because isn't it going from 200 feet to 260?
You are correct. What I was referencing was where the initial, so if you can look on the screen where the initial building was.
Yep.
They're expanding an additional 50 feet in the northern direction. It is, let's see, the original one. Of course, all the plans I have don't have the old dimensions on it. I apologize, Chris.
That's okay. I mean, we can just make sure that it's updated, correct, if it needs to be, and if I'm reading it wrong, then,
I'll be sure to look into that and update it.
okay. And then on page 25, number 13, is the date for the landscape plan? I know these are all back in 2016, but is it supposed to be 7/21 there too?
Thank you for catching that. Yeah, it should be 7/21/2016.
Okay. I just wanted to get those corrections.
Very good.
Discussion. It's always hard because you have the heart and then you have the code. And I appreciate the way they've laid out the building. I think they've taken great care in buffering, and everything they've done seems so right. But for me, it still comes down to following the code. And I think we talked about this earlier. We don't set policy. We find the facts, and that's what we propose to the council. And in this case, I don't think they meet the code. So I believe that we need to work closer to the less than 50% metal.
Okay.
That's, otherwise, I think everything else is great, and I'm really happy to have the business expand here.
Bob, do you have anything in this discussion?
Yeah, this is Bob. Ben, I'd like to draw attention to findings of fact number 33
What page?
on page 24, related to the lighting plan. In compliance with city code, 2 additional wall packs. I didn't quite understand the language around 2 additional wall packs for the additional square footage of the site, and what kind of an impact that would have. I know that the city has looked at it, but just help me understand it a little better.
So what I have on the screen here, Bob, is the original lighting plan for the 2016 Phase 2 project. And each one of these is a wall pack light, so a light on the building it is shrouded and cast down. Because the building is expanding or increasing in size, they are going to be, when I spoke to Mike Meyer, he indicated that they'd be adding 2 more lights. And I believe I have a condition in here requesting an additional lighting plan to show that. But if they are the same intensity as the existing lights that are on there now that were proposed, they shouldn't be impacting the site anymore because they'd be going further away from a residential building to your south. And actually, because the building's going north, it's going to be heading closer to a commercial district. And the light should not be spilling anywhere near more than 1 foot candle towards the right of way.
Yeah. All right, thank you for that. I have no further questions or discussion.
Barb?
I have nothing.
Well, I have a few things. Tell me something, Ben. I know you may not be able to answer it, but maybe Elizabeth. Have we ever had a complaint against this business in the last 5 or 6 years?
I will default to Elizabeth. Personally, myself, I have not heard any complaints about this business.
Okay. No neighbors or nothing?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay. I think-
Good evening, Planning Commission members. This is Elizabeth Mersco, City Administrator. I'm happy to report that we have not had any complaints about this property in the past, and I think the company has, worked with the city. However, I do understand that we have code compliance with building standards, In this particular case, they're striving towards the 50%. And I think if you look at the original plans, I think they try to meet that standard with the front of the building, although they've gotten a few updated plans now, and they're changing a little bit about placement. I think their intent was to meet the code while they changed their look. If you look, it's a few less windows, a few less doorways. When you start moving glass and that nature, you tend to change the percentage. And so with building changes, that tends to happen. And so um, I think when you look at the 50% and you look at the public right of way, I think the intent was there. And now there's been some changes with the perspective of the building that actually faces the public right of way.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You were around during that period of time. Can I ask this question? How was it not addressed, the 50% back then? Or was it ever addressed?
I think it was addressed. There were several different buildings, and this was a phase one, phase two. And when you look at the perspective of the south elevation and the east elevation, I think where the latitude was is we've always looked at, yes, the public right of way, but we've also looked at the front of the building, and the intent was always to make the front entryway, have the street appeal, let's just say. And in this case, the buildings um, they screen each other. And so when you're not facing the public right of way, that's when, you know what I mean, we have deference to those that do. And if you look at the east elevation and the south elevation, they put a lot of glass, they put the wainscoting in and such. And I think at the time, the planning commission and council felt that with the phase one, phase two, that they would meet the intent of the code. As things change and we move 6 years later, um, again, you have new people looking at the plans. And in this case, we've made an attempt to really look at the upgrade of the buildings to the materials. And in this case, I think that the intent of the planning commission is to keep to the code, and I think that's probably a good rule of thumb to use. Um, I think where we've given latitude in the past is um, where you have a design, and maybe you're 48% or something of that, or you can break it up with landscaping, as Commissioner Behrens had indicated. I mean, I think that's where you can give a little latitude. um, but I think the intent in 2016 was, yes, please upgrade the front of the building, because that's you know what I mean, the front of the building. And then the side that's facing the right of way, we know it's a very long building. Please put some extra glass in. And I think um, Mr. Myers made a really good attempt to meet that, and the city council accepted um, their plan.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Uh, I, I just think this is a unique situation, unique in the sense that you have a council and I gather a planning commission that made a decision 6 years ago, and now it's up before us to make another decision. And I think that Chris is correct 100%. And I think you're correct too, Elizabeth, that 50% is the goal we want to meet. But yet at the same time, I think that is this overriding, I know if I'm correct, Elizabeth or Ben could answer this question, and I think they could build their building, which was approved back in 2016 with no questions, right?
Mr. Chair, yes, they can build the building, but they would have to use this site plan that's before you. That was what was approved back in 2016. So they would still have to put that south facade in. In other words, they would have to meet that facade, and they would also have to meet the east elevation, because that was the approved site plan.
So I have another question for you, Elizabeth. this one's far off here. So I buy a building. I come in here and I buy a building. And, well, I'm under an old code or whatever, or the building was built 20 years ago or whatever. Well, let's take the one across the street from this one. If I bought that building, would I have to get if I got a CUP, I'd have to change the whole building, the front?
Mr. Chair, our attorney has indicated to us that, there are, legal non-conforming rights, to buildings that were built legally at a given time. But when you come in for an amendment, that's when you open up, what I mean, your building to the conditions of today. And yes, you're able to give a little latitude. And the latitude that was afforded in the freeway district is if you have and we'll take Muddy Paws because that's probably the most recent example that I can think of. You have a steel building and it's an existing building. You're not going to ask that property owner to take the steel building down and build a brick building. I mean, that seems far to exceed the value there. But even though the standards in that district were 100% masonry, so when we talked to the attorney, they said, they legally, the building was legally put there at the time. However, you can ask for upgrades, and we did. We asked them to upgrade the parking lot. We asked them to do the earth tone colors. We asked them to do all sorts of things, but we didn't ask them to take the building down and put a new building up. And so I think when you look at existing buildings, you do give deference and latitude to the property owner, but you do try to come close to the new standards. And so I'm going to give you another example. So across the street, across the freeway, when Trailers Plus came in, that building was a steel and stucco building. And when they came in for an interim use permit, we asked them to upgrade the materials. And what they did was they did an upgrade. They didn't make it 100% masonry. They didn't change the building or take the building down, but they did make a very um, costly facelift to that building. And at the time, the council felt that that was appropriate also, um, being that it was a partially steel building and stucco building, which didn't quite meet our code. In this particular case, though, you have a brand new building going up, and I think that's probably the difference.
When you talked about that trailer, is that the one down where Forest Lake Towing was?
Yeah, so it's the trailer is like right at the what I mean, it's right at the corner of 152nd and I can't, I'm trying to blank on it might be
Feller?
Feller Street.
Yeah, but then you're talking about it was Brinkman?
Yes, it used to be Brinkman Trailers, now it's Trailer Plus. Yes, that is the building.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're back up here, discussions.
But the last thing I want to do is not see this go forward. I mean, that would be an awful thing to say no to something like this and not let them expand. But I would also like to see, I don't know, and maybe Elizabeth, this is back to you. How do we meet and satisfy everyone?
That's a good question.
That's a good question, right? I mean, because the last thing I want to do is say, vote no on this because they're not meeting the 50%. But I'd also like to see that we're addressing what even the intent of the area is to keep making that look more aesthetic and more appealing and keeping the look of Lake Drive growing in a good way. And I'm not saying this building doesn't, it's a new building and everything else. I just, how do we meet, how do we get there?
And planning commission members and Chris, I think the intent here is, and I think your intent is, you want to make a good valiant effort in order to make that 50%. And in this particular case, it is a departure from the original plan, because when you look at the front plan, they had two doors, you know, more windows and such. And I do think they need to I think a compromise would be, you need to dress it up. You need to come close to that original plan, because you took out windows, you took out doors. I mean, you took out glass. You know what I mean? And so you did kind of go backwards. The longer building, I totally understand. It's a long building. That's going to be, you know what I mean, quite you know what I mean, impact in cost. But again, if there's some landscaping and you put some extra windows in, you might say, okay, maybe you know, 40%, you know, is okay with a few extra windows, but really making an effort in the front, because that has always been our most important facade, the facade that faces the public right of way or the front entry of the building. That's the one we've always focused on, to make sure that it had that curb appeal or street appeal when you drove up to the building. I don't know if that helped or not.
It did help, and it really is what I'm looking for, because I think that's what the intent of the code was, and I think we need to meet it. And I agree, the front or the entryway changed considerably from, yes, the original. And I know you added length here, and you added a few windows there, but I do think we need to try and meet more.
This is Bob. I'd like to comment further on that, Chris, if you don't mind.
No?
I'd be amenable to some flexibility here. A couple of ideas that I'd be willing to consider was a taller wainscot and taller trees in the front from a landscaping plan. So if I look at the landscaping plan right now, it shows dogwood trees 5 feet tall. And I think to start out with, that's probably not enough, you know, to make the building more aesthetic. But if it was a bigger tree of some sort that would offset the need for 50% masonry, and we did increase the wainscot to a taller wainscot, I'd be amenable to some flexibility from my position, if that would be acceptable to others.
We're gonna break away from our discussion here. John Williams, do you have something you wanted to say?
I have a question.
You wanna sit up at the chair here so we get you in the microphone?
Yeah, through the discussion that you guys were having, I was looking at the pictures up on the thing, and what I'm looking at, what you were looking at are two different things.
Oh, that's not good.
So if you wouldn't mind, I have copies of this that I
Please.
can pass out.
It's, that's like going to the dentist and saying you're working on the wrong tooth.
Good thing you put it up on the screen.
John, those additional doors on the east elevation, are they there primarily for emergency exit
Correct.
doors?
Correct.
So they're not really there for aesthetics. You have to put those in because of your emergency plan getting in and out of the site.
One of them is an employee door, so the one right off of the double stacked windows is an employee door, for basically an employee entrance to come in
Okay.
and out, because the parking lot's gonna be essentially there for them.
Yeah.
So that one was there for us. I believe the other one is an emergency door, and I'd have to check with them to see if it had to be there. I can't give you an honest answer on that, if it had to be there or not, because the doors on the other side of the building, I think, matched some of the code as far as being far enough away to exit.
So if there were any flexibility, that key employee entrance may be an opportunity,
For as far as adding to that,
adding to it aesthetically.
yeah, I mean, if you, the drawing that's coming around now is what we were proposing to try to get to. That's the 30, I want to say like 37%.
But I'm looking back too at Yeah, I got the old one. And why the big change in the front building or the front of the office? Because, you know, I kind of agree with Elizabeth to go back to the initial design, adds more appeal, and it gives you more, less metal percentages, and I think it just is a nicer look.
That had to do with how the office is laid out inside. Trying to not have a doorway in an office that wasn't gonna be an entrance to the building is why we removed one of the doorways. So the one to the west would be the main entrance to the building for customers coming in, should we have any that would be stopping by. And then we did remove some windows out of there just to try to appease where walls were gonna be coming to the wall, you know, meeting the outside wall, the interior walls meeting.
And the drawing, the rendering you just gave us is 34%, you said?
According to the building, guys, that one is 33.7% on the east-facing wall and 31.65% on the south-facing wall.
I'm confused here. It's 31% on the east wall?
South,
South.
Oh,
And then on
The
the,
main entrance.
on the east wall, it's 34?
33.7.
33.7 on the east wall that faces Lake Drive, and 31.65% on the south wall that is the main entrance.
I think it'd be different, but you got the numbers.
I haven't checked the math. This
Well, it
is
just looks
just,
like it's
this
a longer
is
span.
an email that I got from structural builders that I had them go through and add up what the glass and the wainscot and everything else would be, so I'd have some sort of a number to have an idea where we were at with that.
Well, thank you. I
Excuse me,
appreciate it.
This is
What-
Barb.
Yes.
The problem that you're having is there's nowhere else to attach anything else, isn't that it?
Yeah, so what structural building has talked to us about is the way that that building's built is you have I think he called it purlins that they run horizontal with the building. So the steel works well because that runs vertical.
Right.
And they said, once you try to change into other materials, it becomes very difficult to get that to attach to the building and hold on to it because there's nothing back there to hold on to it.
A structural
So,
problem.
right, I mean, you think of a stick frame building that if you're gonna build it, you're generally gonna be 16 to 21 inches on center with a wooden board that goes vertical with the building. So and your siding would come in horizontal with that, so you can attach to every 16 on center or 21 on center, depending on where they're at. Well, with these buildings, what you're attaching to runs horizontal, so you need something that runs vertical to that, so it gives strength and structural to the building. They said that there's not a lot of materials out there that you can use that would give you that same ability.
John, doesn't the wainscoting go over the outside of the studs?
The wainscoting goes to, what he told me is that attaches to 3/4 inch plywood that they
Right.
attach to.
On the outside of your studs, though, so you're not structurally taking anything away by having the wainscoting.
Well, they're adding purlins in there to try to
Right.
hold that stuff in there.
So the more you add, the more you got to add purlins or cross bracing or something to support it. So, I mean, it's all doable. It's
Oh,
just
anything,
more.
yeah, correct.
I mean,
Anything's
it's not
doable.
that they can't do it, it's just they have to add more material in order to do it from just the basic pole building construction, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say
Yeah,
that's
no, I
impossible
get it.
to
I'm
do.
just saying-
It's just they're saying that it becomes an issue when you start to try to do that, and,
In their normal construction.
right.
Yes.
Yep.
You know, you're at, this is Chris again, you're at, you know, the 33 and the 31, and you know, I still, I think you're getting close. I'm not a designer, and I'm not structurally able to build this. You know, I think Elizabeth kind of laid it out very well that, you know, it would be nice to have a little more design and try to get a little closer. And then with the landscaping and that, you know, I think you're close. And again, I do not want to in any way sound like I'm against anything with this business,
No, and-
because I'm not.
And I understand that, yeah, your guys' job is to try to
We
stay as
protect the
close to
city.
what, yeah, stay close to what the rules are on it.
Right.
And we understand that, and we're just asking for a little bit of leeway on some of that. And we can do some things, but I don't know how much all that's gonna change everything. I mean, so we're trying to stay as close to what the other building is there. We don't want one to look weird and one not to look weird. We want them to look similar to each other. They were both built to be twins to each other. We want to
Right.
try to keep that.
And
do it
you're
without
still going to
adding a
be able
bunch
to maintain that. I mean, we're not asking you to brick the whole building or anything else. I mean, I think you still are going to be able to maintain it between the color and, you know, everything else. And we're not asking you to build a Taj Mahal here either. It just, I think we need to try and stay close to the code and the aesthetics.
Yeah, I
in
mean,
my
I can
opinion.
talk to them and see if we can add more windows along that warehouse area for up in the upper part and some
You
of
know,
that too.
and Bob, I agree with Commissioner Bob, that, you know, the landscaping can help offset things and that too, maybe some.
Right, and I hadn't had a chance to look at the landscaping. I don't know what a dogwood tree is. That's not my tree of choice if I was going to do it. I didn't realize it was on there. To me, it would be more like a maple, you know, I like maples. Those are very wonderful trees. So to me, that would be something that would be put in there, and I don't know what size of a tree is available. You know, when you plant them, the bigger you get, the harder it is to get them to grow when they plant them in there. But, I mean, I'm not against trying to go as big as we can go either, to try to block some of that. We don't want anybody to look at it and see it, and to be honest with you, we don't want anybody to see us.
Makes sense.
You know, I mean, the more that they look and see what you have in there, the more issues you seem to have, so.
Well, this
Thank
is
you.
Bob, and I agree with Chris. I look forward to seeing an amended site plan for this with a little bit more masonry design on the front south edge.
Let's get into a discussion here. I thank you.
Yeah,
there,
thank you.
John. Before we make any kind of decision here or what we do, is where do we want to go with this?
Right, and
And when I say go with it, it's the idea that this might be more of a policy issue that the council has to deal with and not us so much.
right, I
Because we're here for what reason? To look,
find the facts and present it to the
find the
council,
facts and
yes.
deliver it to them. And it's apparent that the council previously in 2016
well.
changed a little thing and allowed you to come in not under code during that time. So I guess we got to come up with something tonight. Either a recommendation to the council or some kind of, send them a message of some sort here on our views on it. I mean, I've heard yours, Chris, and I've heard Bob's, and,
Well, my thinking is totally different, so,
I'm sorry, what?
my thinking is different as far as you've made amendments to design standards for other people. By the design, they are making an effort. And he's explained the difficulty of putting up more stone or whatever. Can't we just focus on the landscaping? I mean, whatever you put on there, it's still just an industrial building. It's not something out on the freeway. If you went by the property, they keep the property, it's very well ordered. You know, I just think that you're being too particular. You know, I mean, it's just for a business. We want this business. And if you can limit your requirements to landscaping, I think that would be an easier resolution for the business.
Okay.
That's my take.
Planning commissioners, if you don't mind me interrupting, I would like to make a quick point of correction to, Bob, I don't know what facade or what side of the building you were looking at for the landscaping, but just a point of correction, the dogwood trees, which are a small red shrub, are going to be on the north and south facing, but I believe it's 8 trees along the front that are proposed planting at 2.5-inch calipers at planting are 4 autumn blaze maples and 4 white oaks.
How tall? It says 2.5 diameter, but how tall is that?
I'm not an arborist, so I wouldn't be able to tell you about that. It's usually pretty small. You can ask for it to be bigger at planting. Or if you are worried about more seasonal screening, another suggestion is to put in something like a coniferous tree in the front. Like we do see at some of other, I think, North Pine aggregate has larger spruce trees that have grown to maturity that you could replace those with, or you could keep it autumn blaze because there are others along here in fall. The whole Lake Drive does look really pretty with the red maple leaves. But I just want to make that correction that they are proposing larger overstory deciduous trees in the front rather than just shrubs.
Thanks for that clarification.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I need a little help. And the help I need, we can do one of two things. We can either say it doesn't meet the code, and send it on to the council, or we could say that we like the idea, it doesn't meet the code, it's more of a policy issue, let the council make the decision. Am I confused here? Am I confusing you?
No, Mr. Chair and Planning Commission members, the recommendation out of the Planning Commission can basically say, the intent is the intent of the code is to have a 50% exterior to the public right of ways. You think that the applicant should either should meet that code, and if that's the recommendation of the majority of you, then that's the recommendation, and then leave it up to the council as to whether they want to deviate from the standard. If you are unanimous and you feel that they meet the intent, then again, you can make that recommendation too. But from what I'm hearing, a majority of you are indicating that you do want them to try to attempt to meet that code standard, and whether they do it through partially landscaping and building materials, to please make their best effort. And I think that coming out of the Planning Commission, I think that would be a recommendation that you could go with.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I wish I was writing that down.
Carissa's got it for you.
Not really.
Elizabeth, can you make the motion? I just talking to the commissioners up here, I feel over this way, and I feel the same way as Barb does, and I'm split, and that's the way Elizabeth mentioned about what we could do. I don't see us, I don't know, we could take a vote or something. How many of us want to go the way Elizabeth said, or do we want to make a decision here and say we're okay with it and send it on? I got a problem here. I'm just feeling people out, but I would probably venture over with Barb a little on this one, so that we'd probably, I don't know where Bob is, but I know where Chris is. I know.
You really don't, but.
Yeah, and we might even have a dead tie. So I don't know. Where do we want to go with this? Anybody have an idea? We're all quiet.
I mean, I heard, the applicant say they're willing to work a little on this. And I don't think it needs to come back to us. I think it would go to the city council, and again, they're the policymakers, that they can look at it and decide which way to go. I don't want to see this business not progress. I want them to come in. And I'm not saying they have to meet the code on the, I was going to use a certain word, but I'm not going to.
I think I understand what we're.
But I think we need to make some more effort to get close to it.
How
Okay.
though? How?
You know what? I don't design buildings, and that's not my job to design buildings. So I don't know. I mean, they can talk to their architect and see they're at, what, 30-some%? I mean, it's, what are we willing to accept? Maybe it's 40. Maybe it's 39. I think it all depends on what they come back with and how it can look. When I look at the original front of the building, and I understand they changed it because they laid their offices out different and that stuff, I get all that. And I understand how pole buildings are built and how things are attached to in that. I get all that, but I think the council, they get to make the policy. We just present the facts.
I wish I could recite what Elizabeth said, but I go along with what I would agree to sending this back to the council with the same understanding you have, Chris, that we don't want to, we want it worked out.
We do.
We want it worked out and let the council make the decision on the 35 or 40% or whatever. I mean, the council before in 2016 allowed a 20% or whatever, wasn't it? Yeah, it was 70.
25?
Yeah.
20,
so
something like that, yeah.
I think it's their issue. I mean, not passing the buck back there. But they're the ones that eventually are anyway going to make the decision in the long run. So what do we, back to you, Elizabeth.
Mr. Chair, one thing you could do is move on with the motion like you normally would, but add condition number 20 that would read something like, the applicant shall update the architectural plan and/or landscape plan in combination to bring the right-of-way facing building facade closer to the intent of the commercial industrial district's design standards for review by the city council. So you'd be adding a condition that they would have to bring something forward to come closer into the intent of that zoning district or the zoning ordinance. And then that would just be the normal motion that you're recommending approval, but it's contingent upon this additional condition. And I can read that out again if that's what you like.
That would be a good thing.
Yeah.
I like it. Can you bring your wordage over so Ron can read it?
Well, I thought Bob could read it.
You don't want to read my
Ron's getting
handwriting,
ready to make
actually.
that motion.
If you, my handwriting is not that great, so it might just be easier if when you get to that point, I can say the that additional condition into the record, if that's all right with the planning commission.
Okay. So all the commissioners heard what,
Yeah, I think
That's it.
that's agreeable, so we can
Yeah.
move this forward, so we're not delaying.
Yeah, we
Okay.
don't want to delay it.
all right,
This is Bob, I'll make a motion.
okay. You want Ben to read it? Or?
Nope, not yet. I move to recommend approval based on the adopting of findings of fact 1 through 37 in the Columbus staff report dated March 9th, 2022, to the City Council for conditional use permit amendment request to allow the construction of the Phase 2 development for Blake Drilling Company with an expansion to the original proposed shop and warehouse building located at 13528 Lake Drive Northeast, with conditions 1 through 19, adding condition 20, of which Ben will cite at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. The applicant shall update the architectural plan and/or landscape plan in combination to bring the building facade facing eastward towards the public right-of-way closer into the intent of the commercial industrial design standards for review by the City Council.
Also based on the city engineer's report dated March 14th, 2022.
I second that. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll take a vote. Chris?
Aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bob, aye.
And the motion moves on to the city council, is approved. And John, that'll be next week on the 23rd that the council will listen to this. Am I correct? The 23rd?
Correct. Yep.
March 23rd, it's, no? Up, like, I got somebody shaking their head, no.
No, March 23rd is next Wednesday is the council meeting.
Not
Nope,
on this
this
one.
was the public hearing and the discussion this week, or today.
Thanks for coming in this evening.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Welcome. Great. Thank you.
We're on board now, it's the 23rd? Ben?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, Jill. Well, we'll go on to item number 7, public open forum. Is there anybody out there who'd like to get up and sing the national anthem or anything?
St. Patty's Day tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, it is St. Patrick's Day tomorrow. We could wait till tomorrow, they'd probably sing it. Hearing anybody online? Nobody online? We'll go on to item number 8, information, Associate Planners Report. Ben?
I have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Number 9, information, City Administrators Report. Elizabeth?
I have no report tonight.
Okay, item number 10, information, the Planning Commission's report. Let's go over here. Bob?
I have nothing at this time.
Barb?
Yeah, I have kind of a comment. At our last meeting, last public hearing, we discussed the drive-through coffee shop, and the commissioners felt at that time that we needed to further discuss the ordinances regarding lighting, branding, and color and design standards. And I also feel that we need to discuss the impact of drive-through businesses. And I was just wondering if where we're at with that plan of action. Do you have anything planned?
Yep. The city administrator and I are planning on hopefully having something, not with that drive-through one that you just mentioned today, but the original, I believe it was 6 other comments, to have something out to you as planning commission members for the first meeting in April is my hope. I will be probably planning something similar to a worksheet or homework for you all to review what findings we've come up with, discussing those first 6, but it won't, right now it is not including that drive-through concept. And that might be a little bit more of an in-depth study than just these more smaller cleanup ones, just because that is a little bit more of a larger impact and review period.
Okay, I've got some information I'd like to hand out to the commissioners about drive-through,
Thank you.
just so they can maybe do some research before all that happens. And there's a lot of information out there.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Barb.
Barb.
You have anything else, Barb?
Nope.
I have only one thing I'd like to say to Elizabeth and Ben. Thanks for the map. I didn't know it was going to be in color. That's a real plus.
It's a framer.
The one I have from 1990 is black and white. It says township on it, so pretty good. Thank you very much. And Chris?
This is Chris. I have nothing.
Okay, item number 11 on the agenda is attendance to the city council meeting next week on the 23rd. I won't be able to make it, but,
I'll go.
and Chris said she'll be there, so. And item number 12, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
This is Chris, motion to adjourn.
Second, Barb.
We'll take a vote.
Chris, aye.
Ron, aye.
Barb, aye.
Bye-bye.
Meeting is ended. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.